How's it going, my truant people? Dr. Slacking, the Slacking Doctor, back with another video today, and today we are doing a top 5 of the most improved or buffed Pokemon in the new DLC. Now, when I say the new DLC, I don't mean the Isle of Armor that came out recently, I mean the Crown Tundra, or possibly DLC beyond that, coming out in the future. If you guys don't know, there has been a leaked list, so this will contain some spoilers, fair warning. There has been a leaked list of the moves that some Pokemon will be getting in the DLC. Now, we do know from some leaks that were there supposedly coming in the Isle of Armor that it isn't 100% necessarily accurate. Now, it might be, I think it was Azumarill was supposed to get high horsepower in the Isle of Armor. It might be that will get it in the Crown Tundra or something like that, but as of right now we know this list isn't necessarily 100% accurate, but it seems to be mostly pretty reliable. So this list was compiled and these graphics were made and everything else prior to a more recent leak, which also leaked the tutor moves that were newly introduced in the Isle of Armor. I will make a part 2 to this video talking about those if you guys appreciate and show some support for this one. If you guys don't enjoy this one that much, I won't make the part 2. But you'll see the graphics look slightly outdated on one of the things that will come up. I have to give a huge shout out to Vivid Color, who made the graphics for the actual moves. He's got a video up on his channel, which I will link down in the description, where if you are a fellow content creator, you can use the graphics that he's created there, as I've done in this one. Other than that, I've made the rest myself. So if they look a little bit janky, I apologize. I do the best I can. Anyway, moving on, let's jump straight into top 5 and talk about the first Pokemon that I think got a big buff in the new DLC with Zapdos. Now, Zapdos got access to a few really powerful moves in the DLC that I think really transform it. So it gets Hurricane, Weather Ball, and Brave Bird. I believe it's going to get all 3 of those in the next DLC. One thing that I have been spamming to people that ask me for advice on drafting in National Dex Draft Leagues, for those of you that don't know, I'm a player mostly Draft League here on the channel. I've been telling them to draft this thing on rain teams because 100% accurate Hurricanes, very powerful Weather Balls, you know, that thing doubling in rain and becoming a water type move, meaning that you can hit those pesky ground types that might otherwise want to come in on you for a 100 base power super effective coverage move. And the fact that this thing also gets access to, of course, 100% accurate Thunders, meaning on rain squads, this thing's pretty terrifying. Now, Brave Bird is not bad for a physical flying move. I think its physical attack is usable. However, primarily this is going to be there for the new Zapdos form, which we were pretty convinced will be a physical attacker. So definitely still an interesting kind of buff to its moveset with Brave Bird. Certainly in Draft League, I can see you having niche games where Brave Bird becomes useful, but it just finally having good flying stab on both the physical and the special side in Hurricane and Brave Bird is incredible for Zapdos, and like I said, I think its niche in Draft League format lies on rain teams because of being able to boost the accuracy of 2 of its most powerful stab moves. Moving on, the next Pokemon that I think got buffed coming in at number 4 is Raikou. Now, Raikou got some minor buffs and then one big one. So if we look at the bottom 2 here, I've kind of tried to order these in what I think is importance. Agility and Aura Sphere are not incredible buffs. It already had Aura Sphere before, but it had to be ran shiny and it had to have a certain nature. I believe it was a rash nature. Now this thing will have Aura Sphere compatible with all its different natures, abilities, etc. So, and shiny variants, I should say. Sorry, not abilities. So, just having that and not telegraphing to your opponent every time you bring Aura Sphere is really, really nice. Aura Sphere was a decent coverage move on this thing for certain things. Say you were playing against a Steelix, so it was pretty nice. It already had access to Weather Ball and stuff like that for coverage in rain teams or weather teams in general, but it now has Scald, so it actually has super effective stab for a lot of the ground types in the format, or not stab, sorry, coverage for a lot of the ground types in the format, and being able to burn things is really nice too. So bit of a weird one, this one. A lot of people have been debating why it even gets access to Scald. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but regardless of the logic underpinning it, it's definitely a big buff for this thing's moveset. Agility I just think is interesting on like double dance sets. You could run like Agility, Calm Mind, Thunderbolt, Scald, and if your opponent's team was full of kind of special attackers, you could legitimately sweep them. Speed tier at 150 means after Agility you can outspeed pretty much every Scarfer. So yeah, I think this thing has a really, really interesting kind of setup niche now with Agility, but primarily just the ability to run like Calm Mind, Thunderbolt, Scold, Substitute, something like that, is really, really scary for this thing. So definitely a big buff for Raikou here, making sure that it doesn't miss out too much after losing Hidden Power. Next up is a Pokemon that I adore as we talk about Blaziken. I've used this thing in Draft League a bunch. It was one of my MVPs in Gen 7. It now gets access to Close Combat, U-Turn, and Aura Sphere. Now, Close Combat is the most significant of these. You no longer have to run High Jump Kick as your physical fighting stab. Those of you that know me well know that High Jump Kick is pretty much my favorite stab move there is, so I'll probably still be running High Jump Kick. I just think the power trade-off is completely worth it, and it's so spammable without dropping your defenses. But what the significant thing of things like this getting Close Combat is that potentially opponents will no longer be running Protect every single time they see a Blaziken to scout for that High Jump Kick and to try and punish you. So that can actually be really useful just in terms of changing the way in Draft Leagues, especially your opponents prep for you, and opening up Blaziken to do bits. In general, Close Combat is just a more reliable stab move anyway, being 100% accurate. U-Turn is fantastic for the momentum. Let's say your opponent wants to go into their bulky water. No longer can you run like the kind of Gracium Z sets that I would run, or Phytinium Z sets that I would run of last gen, but you can now U-Turn out, get some decent chip damage. I can imagine like a banded set on this being really nice. Of course, in formats where it's allowed speed boost, it might still prefer Baton Pass to be able to pass those stat boosts, but regardless, U-Turn to get damage off is really cool momentum. And then finally, Aura Sphere. It's not a huge buff, but it is pretty nice if you don't want to risk a Focus Blast miss. There's a lot of people that don't, and in certain situations you can probably run Focus Blast and Aura Sphere on certain sets to make sure you have a 100% accurate special fighting stab. This thing is one of the best kind of mixed fighting types there is, so having access to just more accurate moves essentially on both sides of its stab is really, really nice. So moving on to the penultimate Pokemon we have to talk about here, we have Latios, another mon receiving Aura Sphere alongside Mystical Fire and Future Sight. So this thing just now is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I think this thing is incredible. Aura Sphere meaning it can hit the steel types that would otherwise resist Psychic and Dragon Stab. Mystical Fire doing the same thing but lowering special attack if they happen to be special steel types. Something like a Magearna, for example, that would be neutral to Aura Sphere, you can Mystical Fire down and potentially even take a hit from that thing if it clicks. Flare Cannon at -1, you might even be able to take one hit, and if you're Calm Minded up, you definitely will. So, yeah, I can see Calm Mind, Mystical Fire, Psychic sets, something like that, being really, really obnoxious to come up against. And Future Sight, finally, I've thrown in here because I love Future Sight. I think it's a fantastic move. And I could see Specs, Future Sight, Lati being really hard to handle without Pursuit being in the game. No longer can you switch into your T-Tar and try and trap this thing. Even if you're in a Chopal Berry exactly for the Aura Sphere potentially, you still wouldn't be able to trap this thing. So Future Sights can then just be spammed. They hit 2 turns after being used, so you can reshuffle your opponent's deck kind of in that time, make them switch around, and make something take a huge Specs 120 base power Future Sight. So I think that's an underexplored niche on this thing. I haven't seen too many people doing it in Nat Dex leagues, but I think it's got a huge amount of potential. So moving on to the final Pokemon. This should surprise no one. I did try and add some variety, so here I could have had a number of the Tapus, but we have Tapu Koko. I could have had Tapu Bulu, which also got some nice buffs too, but I wanted to try and have a little bit of variety in this list. So we have Tapu Koko, which got access to Play Rough and Close Combat with the two most significant, and then I added Rising Voltage on here with the question mark. This, of course, has since been confirmed that this thing gets Rising Voltage. As I say, I will do a part 2 talking about those moves if you guys want to see it. But access to Play Rough plus Close Combat is insane for Tapu Koko. This thing's physical attack was always better than its special. Now it has physical fairy stab, so it can click Play Rough, Wild Charge, Thunder Punch, Close Combat, whatever you want. U-Turn, you can legitimately bring banded sets now with U-Turn, Close Combat, Play Rough, and Electric Stab, and just shred teams. This thing's speed was already fantastic. This was already the best Pokemon in Draft League format, pretty much undisputably by the end of Gen 7. Now it is just even better. With the addition of Rising Voltage, there's a chance this thing might be ban-worthy in draft leagues, and certainly when it drops back into OU, I'll be very interested to see whether it just ends up being a big screen setter as it was for a lot of last generation, or whether this thing just becomes an absolute menace in OU and we have to see Gliscor everywhere to try and handle it. With Grass Knot, it already didn't mind the removal of hidden power too much, so yeah, 140 base power Rising Voltage on its own terrain is absolutely bananas. So this thing is going to be a huge threat. So they are my top 5 mons that when I looked through the list of mons getting buffed, I thought were significantly improved. Let me know what you guys think the best Pokemon are. I will link the leak down in the description if you guys want to have a look through. If you haven't seen it already to see what else is getting buffed, let me know what you guys think of the unreleased Pokemon have the biggest buffs that I missed off here. And of course, as I say, if you like this video, please do hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and then I'll know you guys want to see a part 2, and I will bring back that with things like Rising Voltage, Expanding Force, and all that good stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for loafing around with me, and I'll catch you again next time.